Hey everybody, welcome back to the wonderful world of pitties. And I got my little girl here with me tonight. That's Smiling Diamond. She's a year and a half old. She's one of Debbie's baby girls out of that litter of 10. Uh, I want to apologize for being so long getting back to you folks. We put out the first video and then the holidays hit, a lot of bad weather hit, had a few health problems, but we got it all worked out now. We're going to start pumping out some content real regular. So we appreciate everybody that's been waiting for the next video. But Diamond here, she loves to smile. She'll show you them pearly whites. She's black and white. And at first, she kind of looks a little scary when she does that. But as soon as you tell people, hey, she's just smiling, and they look at her, and she's waggling her her whole back end, not just her tail. She'll get the whole half of her back end waggling around. So, and she'll turn her head sideways and show you those pearly whites. She'll smile all the time. She's a nut, but I thought y'all would enjoy seeing that. Tonight's video is real important. It's not just about pit bulls. The purpose of this channel is to focus on bringing awareness to pit bulls and the wonderful breed of animals that they are. They're so intelligent. But my vet turned me on to a respiratory problem that's going on right now, and so I did some research on it. It's an unidentified respiratory illness, and it's spreading amongst all the dogs everywhere. So I found a webinar that talks about it, and it's unidentified canine respiratory illness. Now, this lady, she's very, very educated. She's got a real deep resume, put out several books. It's a very informative webinar. We're going to touch on some of the points of it tonight, and I'll put the full link in the description below. So if you want to watch the full video, you can. But we're going to just hit on some of the highlights and bring this awareness to everybody about this illness. It's a version of a kennel cough, and I know everybody's had at some point or another had a kennel cough, and but there are several unidentified bacteria and viruses now that they're finding in these in kennel cough dogs, and they're new. And so the standard treatment's not working. They uh, they are able to most of the time pull the dog through it, but it can get real critical real fast, and there have been a few that have died. So it's really urgent that everybody be aware of this. Uh, like I said, as the title says, it's the COVID-19 of dogs, and that's pretty much kind of what it is, because it's spreading pretty rapidly. It started out west, and now there are some cases been already reported here in Tennessee, as my vet told me, and got me started looking into this. Well, let's pull this lady up here, and we'll get started.
Good evening, everyone. I am Michelle Leifer, and I'm the director of the USDAN Institute for Animal Health Education at the Schwarzman Animal Medical Center in New York City. Along with my colleague, Kimberly Young, thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar, Unidentified Canine Respiratory Illness, with Dr. Ann Hohenhaus. This webinar is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to substitute for professional veterinary medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you have questions or concerns about your pet's health, it is always best to consult your veterinarian. Tonight's event will be recorded, and we'll send out a link tomorrow in case you'd like to share it with a friend. We'll also send out a link to resources that are mentioned in tonight's talk. So we appreciate the tremendous interest in tonight's event and are grateful to those who sent in questions ahead of time. Dr. Hohenhaus has incorporated many of those responses into her presentation and will also take some questions at the end of her presentation via the chat box. Please keep in mind, once again, that we can't address specific questions about individual pets. So if you have a question about your pet's health, please reach out to your veterinarian. And now, I have the pleasure of introducing tonight's speaker. Dr. Ann Hohenhaus is a senior veterinarian at the Shoresman Animal Medical Center in New York City. She is a third-generation veterinarian who earned her veterinary degree from Cornell University and is double board certified in small animal internal medicine and oncology. As AMC's Director of Pet Health Information, she writes AMC's weekly blog, hosts a monthly Ask the Vet podcast, and regularly speaks to national media about animal health. She contributes widely to research articles and textbooks, lectures internationally, and has won many prestigious awards for her work in both veterinary medicine and journalism. In 2021, she joined the World Small Animal Veterinary Association's Oncology Working Group, which she currently chairs. We are grateful to have her with us to lead tonight's event. Please welcome Dr. Ann Hohenhaus.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for that kind introduction. And let me share my screen here. There we go. So I want to start first by talking about what is canine infectious respiratory disease complex. So if you start hunting around on Facebook or other internet sites, you're going to see this abbreviation CIRDC, canine infectious respiratory disease complex. And the colloquial translation of that is kennel cough. And kennel cough gets its name because it is an infectious cough that is commonly spread between dogs that are in close quarters, like kennels. But it could be doggy daycare, it could be a dog playground, a dog park outdoors, anywhere where dogs are in close contact. And kennel cough is really common in shelter situations where you've got many unvaccinated or poorly vaccinated dogs coming and going in tight quarters. So a few years ago, veterinarians stopped talking about kennel cough and started talking about canine infectious respiratory disease complex. And that's because it's kind of a complex situation. So this disease can be caused by multiple different organisms. So under the bacterial category, Bordetella brachyceptica, which is what the kennel cough vaccine is that your dog gets squirted up their nose or in their mouth on an annual basis. There's an equine-related bacteria called Streptococcus equi zoo epidemicus, and I believe there's an outbreak of that going on in a Colorado shelter, or maybe it was San Diego, but somewhere out west right now. Then mycoplasma came to the forefront a few years ago as a cause of kennel cough. And then if you're closely following the information coming out of New Hampshire, which is one of the sites where this respiratory uptick has been reported, they report on this Iola KY405, but no one knows. It's a weird bacteria. Mycoplasma is a weird bacteria too. And this is something that has been found in some, but not all dogs that are sick. And so that's why it's got 3 question marks after it, is we don't really know if it is related or not to the current ongoing outbreak. There is this type of bacteria has been identified in people with respiratory disease. So that, I think, is why it's on scientists' radar. Now, in the virus category, this list is not complete because it doesn't fit on the slide, and it's mostly words that are unfamiliar to an audience like tonight. But parainfluenza, canine influenza, canine distemper virus, canine adenovirus 2, canine respiratory coronavirus, which is not the same thing as the COVID coronavirus. This is a dog-specific coronavirus, and canine pneumovirus. These are all viral causes of canine infectious respiratory disease complex. And I pulled this chart on the right-hand side out of a very recent paper out of the veterinary school in Athens, Georgia, University of Georgia. And they asked the question, if dogs have canine infectious respiratory disease complex, what causes it? And what you can see in this chart is that mycoplasma, here are two mycoplasmas, Mycoplasma canis and Mycoplasma cynos. These were found in around 20 to 25% of dogs with respiratory disease, whereas Bordetella, which we kind of traditionally think as the cause of kennel cough, was only in 10% of dogs. And then canine parainfluenza was in third place at about 15%. And then a smattering of adenovirus, distemper virus, herpes virus, another potential cause, mostly in puppies, respiratory coronavirus, influenza virus, and strep zoo in a tiny percentage of animals. So that's why we call this a disease complex, is because it's not caused by one particular organism. It's caused by a number of organisms which spread rapidly between dogs, especially when dogs are in close quarters. What also is interesting in this particular paper is 50% of the dogs, or just shy of 50%, could not have any organism identified. And that's what people are worried about right now, is that their dogs are being tested and yet no organisms are being identified in these sick, coughing dogs. The other thing that this data showed was that around 15 to 30% of dogs have more than one organism isolated at a particular time. So there can be no organisms that we can find causing it. There can be the common players, and there can also be multi-organism infections, which I hope that I've made a good case for the fact that this is a complex.
Okay. This map shows part of the spread of where there's been a lot reported so far. And she'll go on to explain to you on here, if you sit down and watch the whole video, that one of the problems is there's not a real reporting method to report these illnesses. Where, like in humans, we have the health department, and so everything gets reported there, and so they can put out accurate information. But with veterinarians and this, you have so many small hometown vets and stuff that a lot of these cases don't get reported. So this is not a real accurate representation of the cases, but it does show the cases that have been reported. And you see it's a spread over pretty much the whole country. Let's see. All right. Here's where we're going to go kick in here, and she can tell us a few things about what we can do as dog owners to protect our dogs.
By the recommendation to vaccinate, because the testing has not implicated parainfluenza, canine influenza, or Bordetella. But what we're trying to avoid here is what's called a twindemic, meaning if there's really some new respiratory disease out there, you don't want your dog to have the flu and something new too. So vaccinate your dog for what it can be vaccinated against. And that's these three organisms, 2 viruses and a bacteria. Now, my friend Clyde here is on this slide. Well, first, because Clyde is really cute, but second of all, because Clyde is a risk factor. Clyde is one of those cute squash-faced dogs whose respiratory system is not normal. And so he's a risk factor. Just by his anatomic setup, he's at risk for worse respiratory disease. So squish-faced dogs, older dogs, dogs with clapping trachea, dogs with other serious illnesses, dogs that are immunocompromised are at greater risk for problems from some sort of respiratory infection. And so those would be the dogs who we need to protect, first with vaccination, and then second by avoiding other dogs. And it's the holiday season, and so that's hard because everyone's got a trip planned with their dog to see the family, or everybody's got that reservation at the dog spa so that Clyde can go and have a good time while the family is away visiting friends. But you need to think about whether or not that's really what you want to do. You need to ask the question, is my community having an outbreak? Am I willing to take the risk with my dog, or do I need to come up with another plan? The answer is not going to be the same for everyone. But you just need to ask yourself those questions in trying to protect your dog. Now, the other things that you want to do are do not self-medicate, or do not decide to open that cabinet where you've been stockpiling those leftover pills from this dog or your other dogs and say, well, this is what Spike got when he had a cough. I'm going to give this to my dog. That can be risky. Medications can be expired. Medications can be not right for the dog. Medications can have side effects. And so empty out that closet by disposing of the medications appropriately, and then go to see your veterinarian if you're really worried and think your pet needs a medication, because your veterinarian knows your pet the best. The other thing to think about is to allow testing. If your dog gets sick and your veterinarian says, geez, I really think your dog should have a chest x-ray, really think hard about saying yes, because that is a good recommendation in a dog who's coughing to try and identify pneumonia, as I showed you in those x-rays earlier. There is a big panel of tests that uses DNA analysis to try and identify what organisms are causing coughing in dogs. And I'll come back to that in a minute. No diagnostic test is perfect. And although it sounds great, it's a DNA test, and DNA is really cool. If you get a positive result, that probably is helpful in knowing what it is. It may not always help your veterinarian to treat better, because if a virus is identified, we don't have treatment for these particular viruses in dogs. So that's just something to keep in mind, is testing will help you to know what is wrong with your dog. It may not help your veterinarian to treat. Another test that we often recommend in dogs with respiratory disease is a tracheal wash or a bronchoscopy. Both of those tests go down into the dog's airway and try and get samples of the organism causing the coughing, and also the types of cells down in the lungs to help us focus our treatment more. And so a bronchoscopy or a tracheal wash may be something your veterinarian recommends. Now, I hesitate a little bit to mention this, but it's the scientist in me that is going to make me say this. And that is, if you are unfortunate enough to have your dog succumb to a respiratory illness, ask your veterinarian if an autopsy is possible. Doing an autopsy is sometimes the best way to find out what the cause of death in a dog was and help to investigate outbreaks like this. Wrenching for the family, I understand. But both of my cats, when they died, had autopsies because it was very helpful to us to understand what was going on. Might not be for every family, but just at least think about it in your moment of grief if your pet succumbs to this disease. Now, there were some questions that came in before the talk about what
All right, let's see here now. Let's move this forward just a little more. He is a cute little thing, ain't he? She goes over an explanation there of all the different viruses again. Let's see here when to go to the vet or to the
and before this session was, when should you go to your veterinarian or when should you go to the ER? So I'll answer the veterinarian question first. If your dog is coughing and you think you should go to the veterinarian, please call your veterinarian's office before you go, because veterinarians are very worried about making other people's dogs sick by bringing a coughing dog through the waiting room. And so if you put them on alert that your dog is coughing, they may say, come at the end of the day. They may say, come early. They may say, come to the side door, because many hospitals, not in Manhattan, not in New York City, have a second entrance to allow animals with potentially infectious diseases to come and go without exposing other animals. So if your dog is coughing and not eating, coughing so much that they are vomiting, because sometimes you cough and cough and cough and then they throw up. Those would be not eating or coughing resulting in vomiting, needs to go to the veterinarian. Nasal discharge that's kind of clear or maybe whitish, probably not an emergency necessary for a trip yet. But if that nasal discharge turns green or yellow, probably needs to go to the veterinarian. And then if you're able to take your dog's temperature and it's over 102.5, that would be a fever in a dog and you should head to the veterinarian. ER. When do you go to the ER? So one of the resources that we're going to provide you with tomorrow is a little video of a very cute dog who's taking a nap, and therefore it's very easy to count his respiratory rate. And dogs with respiratory rates over 40 breaths per minute need to go to the ER. And so this video will help you practice because it's got a countdown clock, and it tells you how many breaths the dog took during the countdown clock. So it's a very easy way to practice. Second thing is, if your dog is breathing with their elbows out and their neck stretched forward, it's an emergency. And I'm going to show you a couple of videos. If your dog is working so hard to breathe that they can't seem to lie down, they try and lie down and they seem really tired, and then they pop right back up because when they lay down, they can't breathe well enough. And then, of course, if your dog is coughing and having trouble breathing and unable to walk, all those things should make you go to the nearest veterinary ER. So here's a dog in an oxygen cage. You don't know that, but I know that. And look at this dog. He's got his mouth wide open. His tongue is a little bluish. And the dog's really anxious looking. And it couldn't open its mouth any further. And that's because this dog is having difficulty breathing. And I want to credit my friends at the Tufts Cardiology Service because they had this great video, or this great photo on their Heart Smart website. Again, so reliable source of information, veterinary school experts in cardiology showing a picture of a dog not breathing well. I'm very picky about my internet sources. Now, these are two videos of dogs seen at AMC. For those of you who've been to AMC, you'll recognize this as the bench in the back of the room, in the back of the waiting room. And look at this dog. It is, maybe I have to turn my pointer off. There we go. Look at, he's got his head and neck stretched way out. He's got his arms stretched forward. And if you watch his little chest, it's just heaving away there. And this is a dog in respiratory distress. Here's another dog. Notice it's got the same expression on its face as that white dog I showed you the picture of. Head and neck stretched out, elbows held out, and working very hard to breathe. If your dog looks like this, it needs to go to the emergency room.
Right. This chart she's about to go over here, it just covers all kinds of different ways to disinfect and clean your areas and keep them clean. So that pretty much covers everything that on the highlights of what's going on with this disease. Now, like I said, I'll put the description, or down in the description below, I'll put the link to this full video where you can go there and see everything you said that you want, watch the whole thing if you want to. I just wanted to hit on some of the highlights of it, bring it to your attention, because it is a very serious issue, and it affects all dogs. Now, like I said, this channel is primarily focused on pit bulls, but I love all dogs, and I think any dog owner of whatever breed it is feels the same way about their dog. It's a dog is definitely man's best friend. So I think this was something everybody needed to know about, and hopefully it'll get spread around and shared around to where everyone will get to know about it, because this is a real serious issue. Now, as they were saying, things that contributing factors to it are like dog parks, dog kennels, anywhere where you're around a bunch of strange, unfamiliar dogs, and so anytime you're in any of those areas, just be aware of your surroundings. If there is any dogs around coughing, then you might want to take your dog away. And if you have like a boarding kennels, or you run a dog park or anything like that, or then this next section that she's talking about disinfecting the areas, just make sure that you clean the kennels really well and disinfect them really good to help prevent the spread of this disease. So I hope y'all have enjoyed this and found it informative. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, then please hit the subscribe button, share it with your friends, give us a thumbs up if you liked it, and if you leave your comments in the comments below, I'll do my best to answer all of them for you. So from our pack to yours, God bless. We hope you have a good one. And a little spoiler alert, our next video coming out will be top 5 myths about pit bulls. And we're going to meet an internet sensation. So look forward to that next one. It'll be coming out here in about a week or so. Thank y'all. God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.